Hello again, stranger. It's everybody's favorite amateur lumberjack, Amberjack, with another book review. Today I'll be covering Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders. Now, I love this book very much. I read the book in 2017, of which it was one of my favorite books of that year, and so I read it again this year because I just like it that much and it's perfect for this time of year. If you recall, I mentioned it in my fall reading list request video, of which I'll put the link up there, and you can see for yourself what the criteria I was looking for. And I thought I'd cover it again today because it's just that exceptional to me, that interesting. Now, it's a very divisive book. It divides readers. It's a love it or hate it deal. Most of the time. I'm sure there's some people out there who like it 50-50 or lukewarm, whatever. You know, get off your fence. There's no time to be agnostic. The book takes place over a few short days around the death of Willie Lincoln, the youngest son of Abraham Lincoln. And it is... Reese, do not interrupt. And it's actually written from the point of view of the ghosts within Oak Hill Cemetery in Georgetown, where Willie was briefly interred following his unfortunate... What's the word I was looking for? Reese, what's the word I'm looking for? Where young Willie Lincoln was briefly interred after his premature death, eventually being buried in Illinois at his family plot. And of the ghosts is narrated by three in particular, that being Hans Volman, Roger Bevins III, and the Reverend Everly Thomas, I think? Let me double check. Yes, the Reverend Everly Thomas. And other ghosts have their say, but these three specifically narrate what is happening rather than just omnipotently from the author himself. It is written in a very experimental style, what some consider postmodern, and this is what seems to divide readers. Some people don't like the way it's written because it's written in the point of view of some people who... Some of the ghosts are rather illiterate, as well as young Willie Lincoln, of course, and so you see funny spellings here and there, and the author playing fast and loose with punctuation and other decisions like that that lend to a style that is choppy, short, odd, and I can see why it divides many readers. But once you get used to that, it doesn't take 2 readings. It can, you can get it your first reading, but it might take, 20 pages or so until you've grown accustomed to that style of writing. But once you do, it works perfectly for the narrative. The result, according to the Washington Post's Ron Charles in his review, is a strikingly original production, an odd book bound either to dazzle or alienate its readers. Now, the ghosts in the story that narrate the tale, or the spirits you might want to say, they're ignorant of their fate. All of them, they do not call themselves dead. They don't refer to themselves as ghosts or spirit. They believe, in fact, that they are ill and currently convalescing from their respective illnesses. They refer to their bodies as their sick forms, their caskets as their sick boxes, and their graves as their sick mounds. And that is really fun. And I don't want to give any spoilers, but maybe not all the characters are as ignorant to that fate. And when they do cross over, it's called the matter light blooming effect, which creates a fire sound. It's a somber tale. It's a somber tale of loss about a man losing his young son and being grief-stricken. And he often visits the story. His actions, of course, like I said, being narrated by the ghosts. Poor Willie Lincoln is lost. He doesn't know if he's dead or alive, and he doesn't know what's happening. He doesn't know if he's going to be able to reconnect with his father. And while death is not necessarily fun, the book is a fun story that plays devil's advocate, you may say, with the fates of the characters. Now, the goal of the narrators are to reconnect Willie with his father. You see, when a ghost remains on Earth, according to the book, they start to degrade and start to lose their humanity. And humanity is what this book is all about. Yes, most of the characters are dead, but it's all about humanity. And if you stay dead too long, you lose that humility. You don't lose any humility, you gain humility. You lose that humanity and you start to degrade and turn into a caricature of yourself. More and more with every passing year, you become less and less physical in form, and it shows some of the ghosts are mere faceless entities and gray lines even to that extent. And so they want young Willie to avoid this purgatorial fate and to cross over into the light and ascend to a better place. And so they try to get Abraham Lincoln to grieve the young ghost. Well, the dead cannot communicate with the living can communicate with the dead because they can see everything that's happening around them. And so they want the president, Mr. Lincoln, to go to young Willie and to talk him into this, essentially. And again, no spoilers, but the spirits do find a way to better communicate and even maybe persuade the living to act. Now, the book is actually divided into two different styles of writing. You do have the fictional narrative from the ghosts, but the author, George Saunders, actually intersperses it with real sources from the period and some that came a little bit afterwards. Kind of akin to Strange and Norrell. And like Strange and Norrell, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, I thought a lot of these sources were fictional, like he was just making up these sources, because a lot of the sources are they contradict each other, especially in the chapter about the moon and how, different sources say, some said the moon was full, it was clear, it was yellow, it was blue, etc., etc. But I looked it up, and the sources are real, and they are real sources. They are people who wrote about Lincoln or wrote to Lincoln or were writing at that time, including the gatehouse keeper himself. So you do have that non-fiction historical side to the story that intersperses with the fictional narrative, and that's really interesting. And I thought that was very original, and it really made for a good book, especially regarding, because you can't just have Willie and Abraham Lincoln just being spoken of by these ghosts. You wanted some more clarity regarding their state. And the ghosts themselves, a lot of them are actually based on actual monuments. On the headstones in the cemetery, the author actually visited Oak Hill Cemetery and collected a lot of the names of the monuments. So if you go there, you will see actual monuments bearing the names of the characters, but not all the characters. Some of them are purely fictional, and the monuments just aren't there. That's all right. It's a fiction story. The author Saunders has that poetic license to play with the fact. As a result of the release of the book and its subsequent popularity, Oak Hill Cemetery, as a side note, has become a popular spot among tourists who bring the book and take selfies and whatnot, and love to look at the monuments and gravestones that bear the names of some of the characters in the stories, or they're at least mentioned in the book, including the mausoleum of William Carroll, who offered the stone vault to the Lincoln family after Willie's subsequent death. Now, despite being set over a few short days and starring just a small amount of characters, now the book transcends what might be considered an historically insignificant event of Willie's untimely death. Now, we are here in the 1860s, in the middle of the Civil War, and we all know what the Civil War was about and over, and don't argue with me on this. It was over slavery. And there was a lot of references, small references by the ghosts regarding slavery and regarding the war that was being fought over them. And to that matter, the scope enlarges immensely because it's about grief, it's about the loss of a son, but at the same time it's about these huge events that are happening around it. Some of the spirits themselves are former slaves, and some of them are former slave owners and abusers of slaves. That really takes advantage of the era by subtly introducing these factors in and playing these tragic characters that were victims of their time. Now, if I may, I'm just going to read a few passages that illustrate what I'm talking about. We felt, do all we could, in light of the many soldiers lying dead and wounded, in open fields all across the land, weeds violating their torsos, eyeballs pecked out or dissolving, lips hideously retracted, rain-soaked, blood-soaked, snow-crusted, letters scattered about them, to ensure that we did not, as we trod that difficult path we were now well upon, blunder further. We had blundered so badly already, and in so blundering, ruin more of these boys, each of whom was once dear to someone. Ruin more, we felt, must endeavor not to ruin more. Our grief must be defeated. It must not become our master and make us ineffective and put us even deeper into the ditch. Roger Beveridge III. We must, to do the maximum good, bring the thing to its swiftest halt and, Hans Vollmann, kill Roger Bevins III. Kill more efficiently, Hans Vollmann. Hold nothing back, Roger Bevins III. Make the blood flow, Hans Vollmann. Bleed and bleed the enemy until his good sense be reborn, Roger Bevins III. See it right there? They're feeling all these feelings that are coming from both they're siphoning these ideas and concepts from both dead spirits that were giving off residual energy and the living that were, in this case, Abraham Lincoln visiting as well. Thomas Havens is the name of one of the deceased slaves that also narrates among the group. And here's one of his larger passages. I do not know what came over me. Never in that previous place had I been a rash person. What need had I to be? Mr. Connor and his good wife and all their children and grandchildren were like family to me. Never was I separated from my own wife or children. We ate well, were never beaten. They had given us a small but attractive yellow cottage. It was a happy arrangement, all things considered. So I don't know what came over me. As that gentleman passed through, that being Abraham Lincoln, I felt a kinship and decided to stay a bit therein. So there we were, moving along together, me matching him step for step, which was not easy. His legs were long. I extended my legs to match his and extended all of myself, and we were the same size. And out, upon horseback, and forgive me, the thrill of once riding a horse was too much, and I stayed therein. What a thrill it was, to be doing what I wished, without having been ordered to do so, without having sought anyone's permission. The ceiling of a lifelong house flew off, if I may put it that way. I knew the instant vast tracts of Indiana and Illinois, full towns and their complete layout and the nature of their hospitality of specific houses therein, though I had never been in either of those places. At this point, he's reading the thoughts of Abraham Lincoln as he passes through his body. And came to feel that this fellow, well, my goodness, I will not say what office it seemed to me that he held. I began to feel afraid occupying someone so accomplished, and yet I was comfortable in there, and suddenly wanted to know me. My life, to know us, our lot. I don't know why I felt that way, but I did. He had no aversion to me, is how I might put it. Or rather, he had once had such an aversion, still bore traces of it, but in examining that aversion, pushing it into the light and somewhat already eroding it. He was an open book, an opening book, that had just been opened up somewhat wider by sorrow and by us, by all of us, black and white, who had so recently mass inhabited him. He had not, it seemed, gone unaffected by that event. Not at all. It had made him sad. Sadder. We had. All of us, white and black, had made him sadder with our sadness. And now, though it sounds strange to say, he was making me sadder with his sadness. And I thought, well, sir, if we were going to make a sadness part of it, I have some sadness about which I think someone as powerful as you might like to know. And I thought then, as hard as I could, of Mrs. Hodge, and Elson, and Litzy, and of all I had heard during our long occupancy in that pit, regarding their many troubles and degradations, and called to mind, as well, several others of our race, as I had known and loved, my mother, my wife, our children, Paul, Timothy, Gloria, Rance P., his sister B., the 4 little Cushmans, and all the things that they had endured, thinking, sir, if you are as powerful as I feel that you are, and as inclined toward us as you seem to be, endeavor to do something for us, so that we might do something for ourselves. We are ready, sir, are angry, are capable. Our hopes are coiled up so tight as to be deadly or holy. Turn us loose, sir. Let us at it. Let us show what we can do. Thomas Havens. Now that said, this book is not appropriate for young readers. There's sure some of the dialogue from some of the characters is censored, but otherwise the language is very foul. And it being in the 1860s, at the height of the war over slavery, there's also a lot of references to those people in a very, very foul way. And not to mention, there's a lot of references to sex. Some of these spirits were absolute perverts, let's just say. There's the ghosts of perverts, because perverts die too and don't often want to cross over immediately. And now that we've gone over the meat of the book, let's go ahead and judge it to our criteria. Now, the criteria I use in judging a book is different between nonfiction and fiction. But because this book is fiction with elements of nonfiction, I went ahead and applied some of those criteria too, such as in fiction books, I judge the writer's style, and in nonfiction, I judge their research, which is very different because nonfiction ought to only really have one style, and fiction doesn't require much real research, depending. So I judge both style and research for this book. In terms of research, 5. The author prevents a lot of sources and makes it as historically accurate as possible. If you go ahead and dismiss the facts of metaphysics that he clearly fabricates. And the style, also 5. Very different. I give it a 5, others might give it a 1 or a 2. That said, readability. Because it takes a little bit getting used to the style it is written in, I gave readability a score of 3 for the author. It is easy to read after a while, but like I said, you have to dip your toe in and get used to it after a minute. Does the author make this subject matter interesting to the reader? Yes. There's a huge level of interest gauged from the book, and therefore he gets another 5. Character development. Wide range of very colorful characters, both good and bad, and a lot in between. Character development gets a full 5 again. captures the president, his son, the spirits perfectly. Plot development, also 5. The suspense is solid, the narrative thick. You don't know what's going to happen or why it's happening, and when it is revealed, the fire sound. And originality, very original. Very original. This has never been done before, neither in its style or its substance, and therefore another solid 5. And because I give out bonus points for such criteria as unique concepts, of which another 5, which yeah, that falls into the whole style and originality bit, but you get it, it's a bonus, it's in the criteria. And because it won the Man Booker Prize, as is here, see my thumb wiggling? Yes. It gets another 5 bonus points for winning an award or gaining the author some success. Is that fair? I don't know. I think it is. If I don't like a book, but it wins that award, then it deserves some attention. Out of all these criteria, with almost the perfect score, with a section being readability, the book gets an average score of 4.78, which we're gonna go ahead and round to 5 stars. Like I said before, I love this book. It is one of my all-time favorites. I recommend it to anybody who loves history, historical fiction, the paranormal, what have you. It's really exciting, it's really suspenseful, and it's just a joy to read for those of us who love that sort of thing. Thanks again for joining me. I will be posting another video really soon. Sorry I haven't been doing it lately, but the holiday season can get pretty busy. Plus I've started my other channel, but I'll cover that another day. Thanks again for watching. I've been Johnny. You're always welcome in my neck of the graveyard.